what inspired you to write the book? I mean, you put it all
I
on
remember
paper.
no, I remember very specifically when the idea came to me, but the idea changed once I got a publisher. So here's what happened.
Mhm.
We were living in our house on Delaware,
I remember.
okay? And I was sitting in the living room watching TV, and I turned to Dave and I said, you know, so this would have been like the late 90s.
Yeah, sure.
I really like to write a good book about the Foley artists because nobody really knows what they do. And I know some really fascinating Foley artists. They're so talented. And I'd like one to have a channel. I'd like each of them to have their own chapter and have one say Hilda Hodges and one say,
Yeah.
this person and that person. I say
Yeah.
Hilda because I don't want people to forget Hilda Hodges. I don't know what she's doing anymore, but her birthday's coming up on April 1st.
Right.
Hilda Hodges was wonderful. And Allison
Yeah.
and I, and so that was my initial idea. And so I started interviewing them, but it changed very quickly
Mhm.
because I pitched the idea to Focal Press. If you remember, Dave Udall had the Practical Art of Motion Picture Sound, which is a great book.
Absolutely.
And he had said you might pitch it to them. Well, I pitched it to two different publishers. One of them, so I got in the mail. I was in Cambria starting to write this book, The Foley Grail. I said, well, I'm writing it. And either it'll get published or it won't, but I'm writing it because I need to write it.
Sure.
So I was starting to write it, and I was in this little hovel. It wasn't really a hovel, but this tiny, tiny place in Cambria to just get away and just write and do music around town. That's all I was doing, was going to LA, interviewing all my people, doing a few on Skype, but Skype was brand new. So I was only doing a few, like I did Portman,
Yeah.
he was in Florida. But what happened was they said, I on the same day, and I was going to go to Hearst Castle at night. It was around Christmas time. Same day, Nathaniel was visiting me. In the mail was a rejection.
Oh.
And I went, oh, well, win some, lose some. I go into my answering machine on my phone, and it's an acceptance from Focal Press. Same day. So that was really kind of exciting. And I'll never forget, his name was Paul Timmy. And he said, we'd really like to publish the Foley Grail. So then we started talking about what it would be, and we changed the purpose and shape of it. And I was kind of intimidated because whenever I do something new, I get a little intimidated. But I was just determined because at the time, so you got to remember, this is 2007 is when I started finally writing it, because I've been thinking about it for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
My vision was, I want people to know who these people are and what they do and what they think about Foley and what matters to them before we're gone. Because, and of course, I talked about what I knew, which I lessen a bit in the second one because it just sounded a little too Hollywood centric and I wanted it to be broader. But I wanted to hear people's perspectives and I wanted to get it down. I wanted people to be documented because it occurred to me, nobody really, and I kept going back to Dawes Butler, and I would say this to Dave, I said, nobody really wrote a book listening and talking to Dawes about his philosophy or what he thought or how he came upon all of this, about voice actors being actors and not voice people, but
Yeah, sure.
actors who use their voice because they can't be seen, but they're actors. And they've always met at his place in Santa Monica to work scenes and practice. And I thought, nobody really knows all that about him because he died.
Yeah.
And nobody took the time, and nobody's talking to June Foray, and nobody's doing all these people. And I said, nobody's going to be doing this for Foley artists because we're too busy doing Foley.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
I had
We're working.
Working. And I thought, so I'm going to dedicate the rest of my time, because I had started teaching sound editing and Foley and ADR and acting for directors at DePaul in Chicago. And I said, if I don't start writing about these people and hear their stories and find out how they got in, nobody's really going to do this because no one who knows them will have the time.
Right.
And the people who are on the outside won't know what to ask because they're not from the life.
Sure.
So I really want to get their stories down and their opinions and their aesthetic taste and what matters to them, because, and I even got John Post. I even got John Post.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go away
Yeah.
and no one will know. And that's what started it. And
That's great.
then when I wrote it, I realized, wow, I like what I did. I write with a nice conversational style, but I'd like to get better. And so I decided to get the PhD, which is an insane thing to do. Performing artists do not get PhDs. It
Yeah.
is an insane thing to do when you are not primarily a scholar. So I did become a much better scholar, but nowhere near as good a scholar as people who are just scholars. But what I wanted to bring to it was industrial knowledge, the cultural and industrial knowledge of the world, so that I can tell it using the integrity of the scholar, because there's very clear specific training on how to do it right, but still have know the questions and the follow-up questions, and reading and decoding what people are saying because I've done it.
Right.
So then I expanded it to include editors and mixers, because and you know, and directors, and we could do actors, because I know their world. So that was my thinking when and I never expected that they would want a second edition. That surprised me. I wanted to do a second edition, but I didn't know if they'd want to. The third edition, they came to me and said, you know, we think it's about time to do a third edition. And do you think there's some new stuff to add? And I went, oh yeah, because after years of past the PhD, because the
Yeah.
second edition I wrote while I was writing my dissertation for something else, whole different ballgame. The third edition is now I've gotten away from being a PhD candidate, and now I'm someone who's been teaching it for, you know, all the years at Georgia State, 5 years there, and then 5 years at Ball State.
Sure.
So now I've been teaching sound history, teaching film history and sound, teaching music and sound as they go together, teaching Foley, teaching ADR, and teaching sound effects. And so I thought, it'll have a different voice. And I wanted to get at least a director in there. I wanted to get radio Foley in there. I wanted to get the Hollywood Sound Museum mentioned in it because
Thank
it's
you.
important.
Thank you.
I wanted to get a lot more international people, and I wanted to get more people from New York and more people from the Bay Area that I did not know and not talked to before. So the differences this time is there's just I have 32 new interviews in addition to all the first two editions.
That's a
And
lot.
a lot of them are all over the world.
Yeah.